Hi, I'm Lanny, and this is Preserving Today. All right, today I want to show you how you can make a wild fermented soda with just about anything that's around you. And here in Northwest Washington, it is early spring, and that means lilac season. Lilacs are a beautiful and fragrant flower that's found all over the place in many different colors. These flowers are one of my favorite smells in the garden at this time of year. And it wasn't until just a few years ago that I learned that these are edible blossoms. So if you're looking to do something fun with your lilacs, there's a lot of things you can do. You could make lilac sugar. You can make lilac honey. You can make a lilac syrup. But for me and my favorite things to do, of course, is fermentation. So I wanted to challenge myself to try to use these in a way that I hadn't heard other people using them and to just try it and see how it turns out. Because this video is not just about making a lilac fermented soda. This video is about showing you how I use my logic and understanding to experiment in my kitchen. So today I'm going out to our lilac bush and I'm just clipping some bunches of flowers off to take inside with me. I'm looking for juicy petals that aren't turning brown and are mostly all the way opened. When I pull them off, I'm going to shake them a bit to try to lose any of the little dead flowers that might be on them, and then we'll bring them back into the kitchen for some picking. Now I sit down and put some music on or a good podcast and just get into this. It might seem tedious to some, but it's really nice to quiet the mind and do a repetitive task with your hands. It's really soothing and it's also productive because we're making a wild fermented lilac soda that I can share with my family. Wild fermented sodas can be made with anything that has carbohydrate, like vegetables or fruit or even petals of flowers. You're also going to add sugar and water to start the bacteria process, and you're going to bottle it before it turns into alcohol or vinegar. If you're not familiar with the process of wild fermented soda, or kvass as it's sometimes called, check out my video on how I make kvass, which I edited down with clips from my Getting Started with Fermented Beverages workshop that I did online a few years ago. Those workshops are still available to purchase online, the replay and the book at greenerpostures.com/workshops. Today I'm using that kvass method to make this lilac soda on the fly. And all I'm doing to separate these flowers is just pulling them off, trying to leave any green stems behind. I'm also not trying to take on any of the older looking flowers that might be brown and leave the spiders behind as well. Now in my normal kvass recipe, I go for 2 pounds of fruit. I'm not going to do this by weight. I'm going to do this by volume. And I'm doing a smaller size than usual, so it's fine. I'm just going to adjust the amount of sugar and water I add to it. That's the difference here, and that's the common sense I'm talking about and how I can figure out how to improvise in my kitchen without it being a big deal. That's a quart-sized jar full, but not packed full, of lilac blossoms. Now I'm going to add that quart-sized jar into this mason jar that's about a gallon size, and I'm going to add a half a cup of cane sugar. From there, I'm going to add 2 quarts of water, which is equivalent to 8 cups, of course. And I'm going to give it a really good stir. Next, I'm going to cover this jar with a coffee filter and a rubber band. That will keep the bugs out and fruit flies and still allow it to let gases out. Here's what it looks like a few hours. And you can see a lot of these flowers are floating to the surface and the water is kind of changing color a little bit, but not really at all. So the reality of this is the most important part is that you're present with your ferment and you stir it a few times a day. My goal is going to be to stir this 3 times a day. Sometimes I forget and that's okay, but really morning, sometime in the afternoon, and right before bed. This is going to prevent mold from being able to grow on the top of the flowers that stick above the water. Mold cannot grow without oxygen, so it will not grow below the water level. So all you have to worry about is stirring this enough that doesn't give a chance for mold to grow. Stirring it's also going to introduce extra oxygen, which is going to help the yeast and bacterial process and move everything around to make sure the food is evenly distributed as well as the bacteria and yeast. Checking back after 24 hours, you can see the color in the flowers are starting to change. They're shrinking in size and the liquid is getting more color to it. So I'm going to stir, stir, stir. Here, after another day, more of the same, more brown on the flowers. They're shrinking in size, and the liquid is turning a different color. Now, the liquid is not turning a beautiful lilac color. Wouldn't that be nice if it was? What I see here is this kind of like brownish yellow liquid. And what I did read online about people making lilac syrup is they say that it doesn't take the lilac color on, which can be disappointing. So most people add some blueberries or blueberry juice to their lilac syrup so that it'll give it a little extra sweetness and a little more flavor and that beautiful color. So if someone's sharing a lilac syrup with you and it's a really nice lilac color, it's a lie. They're frauds. But doing something to your brew to make it more appealing visually is not a bad thing. And I think next time I make this soda, I will add a few blueberries just so it looks nicer instead of just looking like piss water. Stirring it this day, I start to notice a lot of bubbles forming on the surface when I stir, and that is a good sign. Fermentation is taking place. It's just a matter of time until we bottle this. The following days, I'm noticing the water is not only taking on color, but now it's cloudy. The cloudiness is showing us that the lactic acid bacteria is doing its thing. And I see a lot more bubbles on the surface, and when I gently move aside the petals on the surface, you can see those bubbles start to rise up. And I feel like it's going to be time to bottle it. So what I do is I grab a fine mesh nylon strainer, and I'll link to the pack that I got from Amazon in the video description here. But you can use any fine mesh strainer as well as a metal one, as people will tell you you can't use that in fermentation. Yeah, I wouldn't leave it sitting in my drink, but to just quickly pour it through, it's not going to kill everyone. So use what you have, especially when you're getting started. Don't go buy a bunch of equipment if you aren't sure this is going to be your new favorite hobby like it is mine. But if it is, investing in a nylon mesh strainer isn't a bad idea. I'm also going to use a funnel to get this liquid into my bottles. And today I'm using 3 different type of bottles so that you can see the difference. I'm using a glass swing top bottle that is fermentation grade, and I'll link to those that I also got on Amazon in the video description. But you don't have to use those bottles. They're beautiful, but they are also a little bit expensive. So you can use what you have around the house, like a used GT's kombucha bottle works great. It's a glass bottle with a plastic cap, and if you don't have that, yes, just use a plastic water bottle or a plastic soda bottle or plastic soda water bottle like I am here. And for me, I prefer to always do 1 bottle with plastic because then I can squeeze the outside and see how tight it's getting. And that helps me determine if the carbonation is building up within the bottle before I try to open it. So the next step is to do the second fermentation in the bottle. That means you did the first fermentation was in your glass jar, and now you've moved it to a bottle, and this purpose is to build up carbonation. So I'm going to let it sit for either 8 to 12 hours if your house is really hot, or 24 to even 48 hours if it's really cool. What I'm looking for is some firmness in that plastic bottle. So I just give that a squeeze to see it's starting to firm up. It's looking a little tight, and I'm going to move this to the refrigerator. After this is moved to the fridge, it's ready to drink. So as soon as it's cold, you could give it a try. Now this is a total crapshoot, guys. I don't know if I'm going to like this soda or not. And turns out I didn't like it. It wasn't good. It tasted weird to me. It didn't have a lilac taste. It didn't have a floral taste. That flavor really transformed during the fermentation process. But there was a really lemony taste to it. And then there was this other taste that I couldn't put my finger on. We had a big potluck and I had a bunch of ladies in my kitchen and I had everybody taste it. And a lot of people said that they thought it tasted a little bit like barbecue sauce. But funny, nobody else didn't like it except me. Everybody else thought it was good, but it's just very unique. And how cool is that? I made a soda that like no one else that I know has ever tasted anything like it. People were excited to try something new. They were excited to try something they'd never tried before and excited to try something that I made just with using the stuff around me in my own yard in the springtime. So the lesson, I'd say, the takeaway from this video isn't in this exact recipe. It's in this method of understanding how the fermentation process works, understanding how to do it successfully without getting things moldy or turning into alcohol or vinegar. Sorry if the end of the video was disappointed and you wanted me to tell you how delicious this tasted. You have any questions? Or would you share some of your fermentation experiments? Please leave them in the comments. I love to hear from you. I'm Lanny, and this was Preserving Today.